So even though going down here, we can see that the net profit, oh my gosh. I haven't looked at this yet. Holy crap. Last month, I had a first happen for me, I think in the whole time that I've been selling on Amazon, and if not that, at least since like I very first started. We'll get to why that might not even be the case. Pulling up Seller Central here real quick. I'm going to the last 30 days. We can see that for the first time, I think ever, there's a hole in my sales because I had a no sales day where I didn't sell anything. That's so bad. Sorry if my voice is a little scratchy. I've had a sinus infection for like 3 days. Blech, hate it. It's so arid here in Moab too, but at least it's super pretty. So today I want to go over last month's sales for me on Amazon, April 2022, because last month is the worst month that I think I've ever had selling on Amazon, and we'll take a look at what that turns into in terms of profit. Let's just say I've needed to dip into savings this past month or so. That's why you oversave for your taxes, so you got a couple $1,000s of a bonus. This is what we're looking at for the last month, April 1st to the 30th, 2022. I had 190 order items, 236 total units, which only amounted to $2,839.99. That is less than $100 a day, $94.67. And the reason for this, you probably already know if you watched some recent videos, is I haven't been shipping anything into Amazon, or I hadn't been. But if we look down here at some pretty sobering news, we see that same date range 1 year ago was $9,200 in sales, which is pretty average for what I have been doing, but not quite what my goals are going to be for this upcoming year, as I have been recently doing some internal work as well as changed some goals for myself. If we look at that $2,839.99 number, you might think that's probably not the lowest you've ever done because you had to start on Amazon. Well, luckily, I guess unluckily, I pulled up what my first month was on Amazon, which was November 1st. As you can see, there was no sales on the 1st or the 2nd. So basically over 28 days from the 3rd to the 30th, I sold $3,231.75, my very first month selling on Amazon. I sold less units, 224 as compared to 236, but my sales average per order was $15 instead of $14 and change. So I sold $3,231. I sold more the first month getting into Amazon than I have this month. That's so embarrassing. I haven't looked at a lot of the profit numbers yet. I just pulled this up because I wanted to see if April was lower than my first month selling on Amazon. So we're gonna be discovering a lot together. Yikes. Before we get into the profit amounts and what this actually turns into in my pocket, I do want to show something that epitomizes how bad this month's sales were, because back in January, I had been sending a decent amount of shipments in. If we look at January, just the 24th through the 28th of 2022, we can see that I had 235 units ordered over these five freaking days, only 5 days. And I had 2 less units ordered, but the average sales were more. Therefore, over 5 days, I sold $200 more in products than in a 30-day period. But what does that actually turn into in terms of profit or money back in my pocket? And it will be a little bit higher than what Inventory Lab says, because we have to also account for the cash flow. Normally, if you're worrying about net profits and stuff, you're only thinking about the profits, or whatever, like Inventory Lab, whatever software you use actually tells you the profits are. However, if you're like me and you don't ship anything in for a month, that will be a little bit misleading to your cash flow, because your profit is the sales minus the fees, minus your buy cost, minus other expenses. There's a birdie. Oh, Nat Geo over here, baby. And obviously, this is true for your net profit. However, profit can be thought of 2 different ways. I've talked about this before, it's probably getting old by now, but cash versus accrual accounting. Accrual accounting is true where you count the buy cost when you sell an item. So this is what the profit numbers show on Inventory Lab. This is how most inventory-based businesses work. But if you don't do more than, I think it's $3 million in sales per year, you don't need to do accrual-based accounting, and it can be a little bit more confusing because then you have to carry over inventory, and I don't want to have to deal with that mess because I'm not a massive seller. So instead, my profit this month on a pure basis is this number, what Inventory Lab is going to give me. However, my profit is actually this plus the cost of goods sold, because that's money that's going back into my bank account that I'm able to use again. And since I haven't spent anything on products this month, if we're using cash-based accounting, you only account for the products when you buy them. So I would have technically already written them off. So they would count now as cash profit instead of accrual cost. I hope that makes sense. And some people have said that when I do that, I'm like not really seeing my numbers how they are, or like I'm trying to cheat the system or something. That's definitely not true. It's just how accounting works. This is an IRS approved practice. You're able to do this. So let's take a look over at Inventory Lab real quick. We can see I've already pulled up the month of May. I actually haven't looked at this yet, so I'm interested to see what happens. But our sales are always a little bit different than in Amazon because they account for sales when they're actually shipped out, because that's what Amazon's API gives them to do. So we see $2,292.32. Well, that's all going to be scratched because that's the month of May. I'm a little silly head. Okay, going back. Sales of $2,978.65. So it's actually a little bit higher than what Amazon had said. Got $291.86 of refunds. that's pretty high. That's 10%. I should maybe look into that a little bit, but I'm kind of comfortable with that because I was selling a lot of apparel, and anything up to 10% returns for apparel I'm fine with for the most part, especially because a lot of this will probably be back in my inventory that I'm able to resell again. We do have a decent amount of reimbursements and shipping credits, so it all breaks down to $2,807.65, which is pretty comparable to what the actual sales were here. It'll end up being pretty similar in terms of profit numbers to what it actually is at the end of the year, where I actually use Amazon stuff to do my taxes. So moving on to the expenses, then we're going to skip over cost of goods sold for a second because of what we talked about, and we'll add it back in. But we have selling fees here, $472.45, which includes closing fees and Amazon referral fees. Selling on Amazon, you have to pay referral fees, unfortunately. Then FBA transaction fees, $858.71. That's for fulfillment fees like pick and pack. They're sending the items to the customers, obviously. And then shipping chargeback of $18.68. And then we have inventory and inbound shipping fees, which we don't have any inbound shipping fees. As we can see, it's just storage fees, which amounts to $47.73. We have some other expenses like refund administration fees, selling fee refunds, which I got $50 back of that, so that's not that bad. That takes that number down to about $250, so less than 10%. And then liquidations, $949, and then the Amazon Pro subscription, which is $40, which I pay for because I sell more than 40 units per month. So that brings our total fees to $2,780.85, but that is including up here this cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is $1,391.72. That's how much I initially paid for everything that was sent to customers this month by Amazon and purchased by them, obviously. Now, the reason I bring this up separately is because of what we talked about in the cash versus accrual accounting, where this technically for me is positive cash flow, and if we're doing just cash-based accounting, since I didn't spend anything on inventory, this turns out to be a positive in the profit and loss column. So even though going down here we can see that the net profit, oh my gosh. I haven't looked at this yet. Holy crap. The net profit was $26.80 for the month on $3,000 of sales. Wow. And that actually makes sense for me for a couple of reasons that I'll get to, but that's accrual-based profit. Now I definitely want to add this back in. But if we add back in that $1,391.72, that turns our profit into just over $1,400 using a cash-based accounting method, which is not cheating because it's actually how I do my accounting. However, I do want my accrual profit to be more than $30 a month. Oh my gosh, I did not look at that before. I did not know that was $27. There are a couple main reasons why this happened this way though, which I'm comfortable with, because I wanted to get rid of all of my inventory. I do have a full video about this that I'll link at the end of the video for you to go ahead and watch next, because it's a really important concept to get, especially if you're a newer seller on Amazon. But dropping prices to either break even or even lost prices, which is why there was a week here, you can see this third week here, I lost $50 of technically accrual profit, is really important, because getting that money back from inventory that's been at Amazon for at least 3 months at this time, because I hadn't shipped anything else in, is really good to start spending it on more inventory. But there are sometimes that prices are just never going to go back up, and then you'll just be paying storage fees on it or having to liquidate or dispose of it, which are more fees that we've already talked about. But in this week that I lost $50, if we go back up here to cost of goods sold, it was $177.62. So instead of just losing $50, I actually got $130 of profit because I was able to get that $130 of cash flow back in my pocket. The really important thing here is that cash is better than waiting. Don't just wait on stuff to sell. Get cash back, especially if you're being disciplined about buying more inventory, which is what I'm starting to do this week. But having that cash is way more important than just waiting on prices to go back up. I just like to drop my prices, get cash back out of it, which is why this isn't as big of a loss as it seems, even though I ended up like making nothing. So bad. So if you have inventory that's been at Amazon, I like to do this after like 30 or 60 days, but at the longest time period that I would wait would be 90 to 120, especially because they just changed long-term storage fees to be 270 days instead of 365 days. I would definitely watch this video as to why and how you're going to drop prices to make sure that you're being profitable instead of just losing money. If you want to see the other income breakdowns that I do, they're over here. They're all better than this one, but I gotta go do some online arbitrage and start to source.